the Webinar Talk Show. I'm Eliz Green.
And I'm Tom Singer. And Eliz and I started the Webinar Talk Show because we knew as more webinars started to pop up during the whole coronavirus situation, we knew that webinars could be better than talking heads over PowerPoint.
That's so very true. And we've been working with quite a few people over the last several weeks about reinventing their event. And something that I've noticed an awful lot is that our event professional colleagues, they're a pretty stressed bunch.
They are, and that's why I thought today it would be a lot of fun to interview Eliz about her expertise, because Eliz is a leading expert when it comes to this whole idea of stress in the workplace and in life. And she has conducted a multi-year study on stress in the workplace. And I think this is really important stuff for people in this current situation. So Eliz, welcome to being a guest on the Webinar Talk Show.
Turnabout, that's always fun.
So Eliz, I got to thinking about this before we got started, and I had a couple questions for you. Number one, why is uncertainty so stressful?
One of the things that was really interesting in the research I did on job stress is that there were two top stressors. The top stressor for almost everybody is overwhelm, just the sheer amount of things that we need to pay attention to. But the second most common stressor was uncertainty. That's even before this pandemic. I would imagine that if we were to do that same study now, that uncertainty piece would be much bigger. And I know when organizations are going through change, as we're all going through right now, that piece of the pie of uncertainty is much larger, that more people are stressed by that uncertainty.
So I think we have to start by going backwards a little bit.
Okay.
So how did you really get exposed to this whole world of stress? Tell everybody a little bit about your background.
Well, back in the day, if we sort of do the rewind, 20 years ago, at this time, I would have been grossly pregnant with twins. And shortly after that time, I was on bed rest for the majority of that pregnancy and in the hospital on bed rest for a month. That is where I was when my husband and my lives changed significantly. Not only were our beautiful babies, we have twin daughters, were born, they were 2 months early. And they were born by C-section because I had suffered a massive heart attack on that day. I'm still here. The girls are well. We're all good. And not in small part due to the excellent medical care we got. So I was in the right place at the right time for that to happen. I have a small part of my heart that doesn't beat anymore, which means that my health is uncertain. It's something that I've lived with for those 20 years. And early on, that caused a lot of anxiety and stress for me. Just wondering how long I got to be a mom, what that was going to look like. I became a speaker after everything happened because women and heart disease was something that nobody talked about. And I was willing to tell my story for a point. And then I was traveling, which was another layer of uncertainty. Like, I'm taking my uncertain health and taking it on the road. I had to develop ways to manage that stress and process that stress so that I could go out and do what I needed to do, be a mom, be a speaker, do all of those things. Fast forward now 20 years, we have this pandemic, which has created a huge amount of uncertainty, which feels, as odd as it seems, very familiar to me. I know some things about how to deal with that uncertainty. And uncertainty is different than other stressors. All stressors create that stress reaction in our body. When our body perceives stress, it pumps in cortisol, which makes our heart rate go up and our blood pressure and our blood sugar. And it even makes our blood stickier so that if we were injured, we wouldn't bleed to death, which is all good if we're in an emergency situation. But when we're living up here at high alert all of the time because of so much uncertainty in our environment, the cortisol doesn't come back down again. It stays high. Our blood pressure stays high. Our blood stays thick. All of those things, which makes your heart work harder. For me, I do everything I can to avoid making my heart work harder because there's a part of it that doesn't work anymore.
So how do you do that? What are some of the tricks that you do to make sure that you're keeping that stress at bay?
There are several things that we can do. The first one is really determine what are the things that we can control and we can't control. And you and I have done quite a few sessions over the last 10 weeks on the stress of having now to shelter at home. Now we have a whole different layer of uncertainty coming out as society starts opening up again. Figuring out what are those things that we can control and what are these things that we can't control. And it seems like, I don't want this to get political, it seems like wearing masks has become this, rub in between people about, should everybody be wearing a mask? You can't make me wear a mask. That sort of push and pull. And we all, in every situation, are doing a cost-benefit analysis. Like, is the benefit of doing this outweighed by the cost? And when the cost outweighs the benefit, that's when we feel stressed. So in terms of wearing the mask, there are people who are genuinely concerned about government overreach. And as Americans, we are fiercely independent people. We don't like to be told what to do. So if you're viewing the cost of wearing a mask as outweighing the benefits, being forced to wear a mask is stressful. Now, if you're like me, and I need to protect myself from getting COVID-19, because guess what? COVID makes your body make blood clots, which is something I don't need, because that's my biggest risk, is a blood clot. So I can control wearing a mask. I cannot control anybody else wearing a mask to help protect me. That causes stress for me. So I can't control whether or not another person is wearing a mask. I can control what I can do. So I've bought a mask that has a filter in it, which is overkill for most people, but it is what makes me able to go out in a limited capacity where I feel safe to be out in the world and not in my house every day, because I'm getting a little tired of being in my house every day.
So that's one way that you can control the uncertainties. You can have that better mask. What are some other ways that people can control their stress?
Well, part of it is really identifying the things you can't control and stop trying to control them. We can't control other people. We can't control how long this is going to last. We can't control what our government tells us to do. Those are things that we can't control. We can control our personal behavior. We can control whether or not we're going to places. We all have to do that cost-benefit analysis and figure out where we're comfortable and what we can do to sort of stop feeling so out of control, so unpredictable. Because our body's like a predictable environment. When things are unpredictable, we interpret that, or our bodies interpret that, as risk. That's why that anxiety goes when you feel like you're out of control. Limiting the outside input of that unpredictability, the constant news cycle, is something that is very I know it's triggering for me in terms of that unpredictable, out of control, uncertainty feeling. If I can limit my exposure to particularly video news. When we're watching news, our brains like to jump into the story and become part of it. That's just kind of how it works. If we're reading a story, you might read something that upsets you, but your brain isn't trying to become part of the story. It's a different reaction. I'm a big fan of reading the news, not necessarily on Facebook, but choose a couple of trusted resources and try to limit that sensationalized television or video news. Because let's face it, that news is designed to keep you watching. So all of the language that's used, the graphics and the music, everything about that is designed to pull you in and keep you watching. Limit your exposure to that, maybe read more, and keep those triggers that you know are happening from triggering that stress response. Because if we can keep it from happening, that's good. But once it happens, it is possible to shut it down and process that cortisol out of your body. And that's kind of the second piece of figuring out what you can control. And then for the stuff you can't control, figuring out how to shut down the reaction and process it out.
So Eliz, this is fascinating to me that, you have spent so much time sort of looking at this. Let's take this into the business setting.
Sure.
What can leaders now do to help their teams deal with uncertainty? Because we've had all this uncertainty when we were told to shelter in place, and then we've been home for 10 weeks. But now certain states, and most of them, are starting to open up. I think the opening up is bringing new uncertainty all over again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things in writing the book that's coming out next, I got to talk to a lot of leaders and look at their organizations. And one of those insights that I think is really important right now is that successful leaders lead teams of people who feel seen, valued, and connected to the mission of the organization. And one of the biggest gifts a leader can give their people is to be predictable. There's lots of things that can't be predicted right now. Exactly how your customers are going to react, exactly what the next even 6 weeks are going to look like. But as a leader, if you can be predicted or predictable about the types of support you're supplying to your people and the type of communication you're supplying to your people, they are going to feel more secure and less in that, like, oh, everything's unpredictable, I'm really stressed about it. Because when we get to that state, we are just reacting. We have to be able to kind of let that settle in order to start thinking creatively and critically, which at this time is really what we need from our people, right? We need them to be functioning well so that we can all work together to make the best decisions. It is important for leaders to get to that point before they're talking and supporting their people as well. So as leaders, recognizing that your stress is being triggered by the situation and actively taking steps to shut it down and recover from that is really important. We don't, for the most part, prioritize activities that allow us to disconnect from our stress. Those I have seen over and over, the idea of leisure, that leisure time has been pushed way off, but usually those are the things that allow us to disconnect and recover. Now, here's a little secret. Tom and I have vacationed together with our spouses. The four of us have very different vacation demeanors. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Tom and I are more similar, and our spouses are more similar to each other, which I think is pretty fascinating. Also, our spouses share the same birth date.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Yeah, they kind of are like the same person, and they were born the same day. Yeah.
It's very odd.
A year apart.
But I digress. Yeah. A year apart, but on the same day. But I digress. Here's the thing that I want you to take away from this. Vacations should be about disconnecting from the stuff that's causing you stress. We're going to leave that behind over here. My husband and Tom's wife are very busy vacationers. They like to do lots of things, lots of activities, and it is a go, 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 go sort of agenda for most of the day. We vacationed, my husband and I, with some other couples for his 50th birthday, where we were doing our go, 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 and they were hanging out by the pool, enjoying the sun and the beverages and the reading and the chatting and the napping. And my husband cannot sit still that long. That is not how he functions. So we would go and do stuff and come back until one day one of the gentlemen said, when are you going to relax? You are go, go, go all the time. And my husband said, I am relaxed. I'm like a border collie. If I don't have something to do, I start chewing on things. And it's one of those moments in a marriage where you're like, oh, yeah, that is so true. Need that in order to disconnect from what's in the inbox and is the person that he left this project in charge of doing what needs to be done, that sort of thing. If he's not occupied, he's thinking about all of that, and he's not getting what he needs in order to disconnect from the stress and relax, which is great. Here's the thing. I am not a border collie. I can hang with the border collies, but I need a certain amount of contemplative time. I am more like our friends who are hanging out in the sun with the iguanas. I need a little bit of that time. Not necessarily, if you can tell my complexion, not in the sun. But, so Tom and I, similar, we can hang with the border collies, but we need that little contemplative time.
Yeah, put me at a sidewalk cafe with a cup of coffee and watching people go by, and that is a vacation from heaven.
Right. Now, your wife, my husband, could handle that for about a half hour. Mm-hmm. And it's about the negotiation in the relationship. So think about not only in your personal relationships, but in your business relationships. If you are a border collie and you're just like all the time, that is how you function the best. Are you allowing enough space for those people who actually need to disengage, step back, and have a little bit of that quiet, contemplative time? Are you allowing them to cut off the noise? Because there's a lot of us where all of this is too much. We just need to get away from that, settle, read a book, have a coffee, watch a good movie. It's one of those reasons that yoga for some people works very, very well. But if you made my husband sit down and do yoga, paying attention to his breath would increase his stress. That's just not how it functions. No.
So in the work that you're doing right now with your clients, what are successful companies doing to help their people really manage this uncertainty and stress?
I think we've had a lot of people on the webinar talk show speaking about what is necessary right now. I think it was Tony Chapman who said, how you're treating people right now is going to predict your future success. And I think he's completely right. If you are checking in with your people on a personal level, making sure they know that they are valued and seen. And Jonathan from Titus Talent Solutions talked about the same thing, that it's odd. We're all in this virtual environment and we feel like we are separated, but used well, there's an opportunity to actually be more connected on a personal way. I mean, you are seeing everybody's home. You are seeing dogs and kids and all kinds of things happen that when you have your professional persona sort of out there like a wall saying, I am the successful person and I have everything all together. Well, that's pretty hard to do in a virtual environment 100% of the time. And letting people connect on that really personal level allows you to understand where your people are, provide them the support that they need, and communicate that they are valued, they are seen, and keep connecting them to what the goals of the organization are, and actually listen to what they tell you, because a lot of them are on the front line right now. They're talking to your customers, they're talking to your members, and they know what's going on. They may provide you, if you give them that space, if you create that security for them to be able to think creatively and critically, they may bring you an idea that will shift your business in a way that's going to be successful, not only now, but well into the future. We are laying the groundwork right now for what the future is going to look like.
And I think that's what every company is looking for right now, is how do we find those ideas? How do we get our people together? How do we get people to breathe and be able to focus? So I think that the work that you're doing is probably more important now than it ever has been.
I think it's true. And there are small little things that we can all do to not only reduce our own stress, but give other people the space to do the same. Recognizing when that stress is ramping up, and then taking a moment to find a way to disconnect from it. And there are lots of ways that we can process that cortisol out of our system. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Just moving around makes a difference, because when we move around, we make our heart rate go up and it comes back down again. And anytime we do that and let it come back down, that cortisol level goes right out with it, which is great. But there's lots of ways that we can do that. You know, watching a sporting event, when we get sporting events coming back live, if there's something that you get excited about and your heart rate goes up, that works just as well as moving around. And the other thing I want to talk about is sleep. Sleep is the most efficient way for us to process cortisol out of our bodies. But the mean thing about cortisol is if your high level of cortisol will make it difficult. Makes it difficult for you to sleep.
Right.
So finding ways to disconnect from what is causing you stress. Please don't watch the news or scroll through your Facebook feed, right before bed, because it just starts all of that going on. Disconnect from what's causing you stress, and then take some steps to signal to your body that it is time to let go of that cortisol. One of the best things is to change your breath. So it's why meditation works, but meditation doesn't work for all of us. Laughter and singing are great ways to change your breath. When we're stressed, we take little tiny shallow breaths. If you can lengthen them and deepen them, signals to your body that it's time to let go of the cortisol. So funny video before bed, that'll work. Just don't slip over to reading, what somebody wrote that you don't agree with. Funny videos, or, turn on your playlist and find a song that you love to sing along with, and, be the goofy, nerdy person that dances around before you go to bed. That works too.
So Eliz, if somebody's listening to this and they're about to start bringing people back to the office, and they know that there's a lot of uncertainty and they know that stress is all around them, how can people reach you?
You can find me at elizgreen.com, and it is so many E's. There's an E at the front, there's an E at the end. elizgreen.com, and we'll put that into the show notes too. But awesome. That's the easiest way to find me.
Well, I knew that it was important to interview you because I think that a lot of people see you and I interview other people in this webinar talk show format, but you bring so much positive content to companies and associations. I knew it was important to have this conversation. So thanks for joining me in this format.
Oh, thank you. It's always, I almost always bring Tom along because I truly believe in this interview format, especially in the virtual environment, that it is so much better to have a conversation. It's more engaging for the people who are viewing it than for me to just talk into the void. It's better for me too. I enjoy it so much more.
Well, everybody, twice a week, we do the webinar talk show. So you can find us at webinartalkshow.com, and we have a Facebook page, and you can watch all of these past interviews right there.
Absolutely. We'll see you next Monday. Have a great rest of the day.